Inheritance meetings are supposed to be somber affairs, quiet conversations about the future, maybe some tears, definitely some tension. Ours felt like a graduation party thrown by people who'd lost their minds. I'm Vivian, and the moment I walked into that Hampton Inn conference room in Clearwater, Florida, I knew something was deeply, profoundly wrong. My older brother Caleb stood at the head of the table like he was accepting an Oscar, grinning so wide I could count his back molars. My parents sat behind him, Mom dabbing her eyes with a tissue like she was watching her baby walk for the first time, Dad nodding with this proud, chest-puffed expression that made me want to scream. The room was packed. Aunts, uncles, cousins I hadn't seen since someone's wedding 3 years ago. Even our neighbor Mrs. Fletcher was there, clutching her purse like she'd been invited to witness history. There were balloons. Actual balloons. Gold ones that spelled out congratulations in letters so shiny, they reflected the fluorescent lights. Someone had brought a sheet cake from Publix, with future real estate mogul written in blue icing. I stood in the doorway, briefcase in hand, and wondered if I'd accidentally walked into someone else's family gathering. Vivian. Mom called, waving me over. Come sit, sweetheart. We're about to start. I made my way to an empty chair near the back. My cousin Natalie leaned over and whispered, "Can you believe it? This is so exciting." Exciting wasn't the word I'd have chosen. Caleb cleared his throat and tapped his water glass with a pen, like he was about to deliver a toast at a wedding. Everyone quieted down instantly. "Thank you all for being here," he began, voice booming with confidence. "Today is a really special day for our family. Mom and Dad have been working incredibly hard for years, building something meaningful, 8 beautiful rental properties here in Florida. And after a lot of thought and discussion, they've made their decision about the future." He paused for dramatic effect. I resisted the urge to roll my eyes. "They've decided," Caleb continued, turning to grin at our parents, "to give all 8 houses to me." The room erupted. Applause. Actual applause. Aunt Sheila whistled through her teeth. Uncle Raymond clapped Dad on the shoulder. Mrs. Fletcher dabbed at her eyes. Caleb soaked it in, nodding like a politician who just won re-election. Then he turned, found me in the back row, and his grin sharpened into something crueler. "Vivian," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "too bad, you're getting nothing." The room went silent. Every head turned toward me, waiting, watching, expecting me to cry, maybe, or argue, or storm out like the bitter, overlooked daughter they probably assumed I was. Instead, I smiled. Not a fake smile. Not a polite one. A real smile. The kind that comes when you know something nobody else in the room knows. I leaned back in my chair, crossed my legs, and let the silence stretch just long enough to make everyone uncomfortable. Then I looked directly at Dad and said, very quietly, "Dad, you really don't know, do you?" Dad's face went pale. His hand, halfway to his coffee cup, froze in midair. Mom's smile faltered. Caleb's expression shifted from triumphant to confused in less than a second. "Know what?" Dad's voice came out strangled, uncertain. Caleb took a step toward me, face reddening. "Vivian, no. What?" I didn't answer right away. I just reached down, opened my briefcase, and pulled out a single manila folder. That's when everything began to unravel. Let me back up. Growing up, Caleb was the son my parents bragged about at every opportunity. Church potlucks, Thanksgiving dinners, random encounters at Target. If there was an audience, Mom found a way to mention Caleb's latest achievement. Caleb just got promoted at his sales job. Caleb's thinking about getting his real estate license. Caleb's so good with people, he could sell ice to an Eskimo. Never mind that the promotion was lateral, or that he never actually got that real estate license, or that his people skills mostly involved charming his way out of responsibilities. I wasn't the rebellious kid. I didn't dye my hair purple or sneak out or get caught smoking behind the gym. I followed the rules. Got good grades. Went to community college, then transferred to University of Central Florida. Graduated with a degree in accounting. I was reliable. Responsible. Boring, probably, in my parents' eyes. And that was the problem. I stayed quiet too long. Caleb, on the other hand, was loud. Charismatic. The kind of person who could walk into a room and immediately become its center. He told jokes at family dinners. He remembered everyone's birthdays. He gave great hugs. He was also constantly broke. By the time he turned 26, Caleb had burned through 3 jobs, 2 apartments, and one very understanding girlfriend who finally wised up and left. But somehow, every time disaster struck, he landed on his feet. Actually, that's not true. He landed on Mom and Dad's checkbook. Just until I get back on track, he'd say. And they'd nod and write another check. When I was 28 and Caleb was 30, Dad sat us both down at their house in Tampa, a modest 3-bedroom ranch they'd bought in the 90s. Your mother and I have been talking, Dad said, hands folded on the kitchen table. We've built something we are really proud of. These 8 rental houses, we want them to stay in the family. I nodded, unsure where this was going. Dad turned to Caleb. Son, we think you're the right person to take over the business. Caleb's face lit up. Really? Really, Mom confirmed, reaching over to squeeze his hand. You're a natural with people. You understand real estate. This is your future. I sat there, invisible, while they celebrated. Nobody asked if I was interested. Nobody mentioned that I'd been the one helping with the bookkeeping for 2 years. Nobody cared. That night, I drove home to my apartment in Lakeland and told myself it didn't matter. Caleb could have the houses. I had my own career, my own life. I didn't need their approval. But that's not really where this story starts. It starts with Grandma Margaret. My grandmother, Mom's mother, was nothing like my parents. Where they were sentimental and easily swayed, Grandma Margaret was practical and sharp. She'd grown up during the Depression, married young, raised 4 kids on a factory worker's salary, and somehow managed to buy 3 rental properties by the time she was 50. She didn't believe in coddling. If you want something, she'd say, you work for it. Nobody's going to hand you a damn thing. After Grandpa died, Grandma asked me to help her manage the rentals. I was in my mid-20s, working as a junior accountant, and I jumped at the chance. Every Saturday, I'd drive to her house in St. Petersburg. We'd sit at her kitchen table, the one with the yellow Formica top, and go through tenant payments, maintenance logs, property tax statements. She was meticulous. Every receipt filed. Every deposit documented. She adored me for it. She tolerated my parents. And Caleb? She didn't trust him as far as she could throw him. But she never told Mom and Dad that. She only told me. One Saturday afternoon, about 2 years before the inheritance meeting, Grandma slid a folder across that yellow table. Vivian, she said, voice calm but firm, I need to tell you something. I looked up from the spreadsheet I'd been reviewing. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. But something's about to be. She opened the folder. Inside were deeds. 8 of them. All for properties in Florida, Clearwater, Tampa, St. Pete, Fort Myers. My parents' rental houses. Except they weren't my parents anymore. I've transferred ownership, Grandma said simply. All 8 houses are now under my name. I blinked. Why? So I can control where they go next. Grandma poured us both coffee, black, the way she always drank it, and explained. 6 months earlier, Mom and Dad had made Caleb the property manager of their rental portfolio. They'd been so proud, talking about how he was finally stepping up, taking responsibility, becoming the businessman they always knew he could be. Grandma had been skeptical. Your brother's never managed anything in his life except to avoid work, she'd said. But your parents wouldn't listen. So she'd watched. Quietly. And within 3 months, she'd noticed something wrong. The numbers didn't add up. Tenants in 3 of the properties, a duplex in Clearwater, a single-family home in Tampa, and a condo in Fort Myers, had all paid their rent in full. Grandma knew because she'd called them herself, pretending to follow up on maintenance requests. But when she checked the bank deposits, the amounts were short. Not by much. 100 here. 200 there. Enough to slip past my parents, who barely looked at the statements. But Grandma noticed. She also noticed inflated maintenance charges. A plumbing repair that cost $800 but should have been $200. An HVAC servicing that never happened. Caleb was siphoning money. Grandma confronted him privately, in the parking lot of a Panera Bread. He lied. Badly. Stammered about accounting errors and delayed deposits and miscommunication with tenants. Grandma didn't argue. She just watched him squirm, nodded politely, and walked away. That same week, she met with her attorney, a sharp woman named Patricia Lowell who'd been handling Grandma's estate for 20 years. Together, they restructured everything. Grandma transferred all 8 rental properties from my parents' names into a revocable living trust. Then she named herself as trustee and me as successor trustee. Sole heir. Sole owner. No conditions. No shared ownership. No chance for my parents to interfere. The deeds were recorded quietly in county offices across Florida, filed under Grandma's maiden name, Margaret Sutton, and using a P.O. box address my parents didn't recognize. When it was done, Grandma looked me in the eye and said, "Your brother is reckless. Your parents are blind. You're the only one who thinks beyond tomorrow. One day, this will matter." I remember nodding, not fully understanding the weight of what she'd done. Not until the night I got the call. The call came on a Tuesday. I was at work, finishing up a quarterly report, when my phone buzzed. Mom's name flashed on the screen. I almost didn't answer. Mom only called during work hours if something was wrong. "Hello? Vivian." Her voice cracked. "It's Grandma. She's gone." The world tilted. Grandma Margaret had been 79, healthy as a horse, still driving herself to the grocery store and yelling at telemarketers. She'd had a massive stroke in her sleep. No warning. No chance to say goodbye. The funeral was small. Family only. I stood in the back of the chapel at Memorial Gardens in St. Petersburg, numb, while the pastor talked about Grandma's strength and faith. Caleb stood at the front, dabbing his eyes with a tissue. Mom sobbed into Dad's shoulder. And all I could think about was that yellow Formica table and the folder she'd slid across it. After the service, we gathered at Mom and Dad's house. People brought casseroles, green bean, tuna noodle, that weird jello salad Aunt Sheila always made. Everyone ate and shared stories about Grandma. Caleb cornered me in the kitchen while I was refilling my sweet tea. "So," he said, voice low, "did Grandma leave me the rentals?" I stared at him. "We haven't even buried her yet." I know. He had the decency to look uncomfortable. "I'm just asking. Dad said she might have put them in her will." I turned away. "I don't know, Caleb." But I did know. The will reading happened 2 weeks later. We met at Patricia Lowell's office, a sleek space in downtown St. Pete with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Tampa Bay. Patricia was in her 60s, grey-haired, no nonsense. She didn't waste time. "Margaret's will is straightforward," she said, sliding copies across the table. "Her personal assets, jewelry, savings, household items, go to her granddaughter, Vivian." Mom's face fell. "What about the rental properties?" Patricia frowned. "What rental properties?" Dad leaned forward. "The 8 houses. The ones in Clearwater, Tampa, Fort Myers." "Those aren't part of this will," Patricia said simply. Caleb's face reddened. "What do you mean they're not part of the will?" "They're not hers to distribute." "That's impossible." Mom's voice rose. "We gave those properties to her years ago for estate planning." Patricia shook her head. "According to county records, those properties were transferred out of Margaret's estate 2 years ago." The room went silent. Dad's hands trembled. "Transferred where?" Patricia closed the folder. "I'm not at liberty to say." My parents spent the next 6 months in a frenzy. Dad hired a real estate attorney who pulled county records for every property they thought they owned. Nothing. Mom called the tax assessor's office, the clerk of courts, even the title company they'd used years ago. Dead ends. Caleb scoured online databases, typed property addresses into Zillow and Realtor.com, trying to figure out who the current owner was. The listings showed the houses as privately owned, but the owner's name wasn't listed publicly. They were looking for their own names. They never thought to search for Margaret Sutton. Grandma had been brilliant. She'd filed everything under her maiden name, used a P.O. box in Sarasota, and Kept every document locked in a safe deposit box I now controlled. My parents assumed the houses still belonged to them. I let them believe it. I didn't feel guilty. I felt calm. For the first time in my life, I wasn't scrambling to prove myself. I wasn't begging for recognition. I wasn't invisible. I had something that was mine, and I was going to protect it. 6 months after Grandma's death, Dad called me. "Vivian, we need to have a family meeting. Can you come to Clearwater this Saturday? 2 o'clock. What's it about? Your mother and I have made some decisions about the future. We want everyone there." I already knew what was coming, but I went anyway. I arrived at the Hampton Inn conference room at 1:55 p.m. The door was propped open. Inside, I could hear laughter, the clink of glasses, someone saying, "This is going to be amazing." I stepped inside and stopped dead. Balloons. A cake. A banner that read "Future Property Owner" hanging above Caleb's head. My stomach dropped. Caleb strutted around the room like a campaign manager, shaking hands, accepting congratulations. I caught pieces of conversation. He's inheriting all 8 houses. Finally getting what he deserves. Vivian should be happy for him. Happy. Right. Dad stood at the head of the table and cleared his throat. "Thank you all for coming," he said, voice thick with emotion. "Your mother and I have spent a lot of time thinking about our legacy. We've worked hard to build something meaningful, 8 rental properties that have provided for our family for years." Mom nodded, dabbing her eyes again. "We've decided," Dad continued, "that it's time to pass that legacy on." He turned to Caleb. "Son, we're giving all 8 houses to you." The room erupted. Applause. Cheers. Someone popped a bottle of sparkling cider. Caleb grinned, waving like a beauty pageant winner. Then he turned to me. "Mom and Dad are giving all 8 rental houses in Florida to me. Vivian, too bad, you're getting nothing." Everyone stared. I smiled. "Dad," I said quietly, "you really don't know, do you?" Dad froze. "Know what?" His voice cracked. Caleb stepped forward, face red. "Vivian, no." "What?" I opened my briefcase. I pulled out the folder. Thick, organized, every document flagged with colored tabs. "Those houses aren't yours," I said calmly. "They haven't been for 2 years." Mom's face went white. Dad's hand shook. "What are you talking about?" I opened the folder and spread the documents across the table. 8 recorded deeds. All signed by Margaret Sutton. All notarized. All transferred into a revocable living trust. Below those, the trust documents. Successor trustee, Vivian Harper. Sole heir, Vivian Harper. Sole owner, Vivian Harper. Caleb lunged forward, snatching one of the deeds. "This is fake." "It's not," I said evenly. "You can look it up yourself. County records are public." I slid another paper across the table, a printout from the Pinellas County Clerk of Court's website showing the recorded deed for the Clearwater duplex. Owner, Margaret Sutton Trust. Trustee, Vivian Harper. Dad sank into his chair. "But, we thought." "You didn't check," I said. "You just assumed Caleb deserved everything." The room was silent. Aunt Sheila set down her cake plate. Mrs. Fletcher clutched her purse tighter. Natalie whispered, "Oh my God." Caleb's wife, a sweet woman named Lauren who I actually liked, covered her mouth, tears streaming. Mom finally spoke, voice shaking. "Why would your grandmother do this?" I looked at her. Then at Caleb. "Because he stole from her." Caleb's face went from red to purple. "I never." "You did," I interrupted. "And Grandma knew." I pulled out the final section of the folder. Spreadsheets. Bank statements. Tenant payment records. Maintenance receipts. Everything Grandma had collected. Missing rent deposits. Inflated repair costs. Forged invoices. I laid them out, one by one. "Grandma tracked everything," I said. "Every dollar you skimmed. Every fake charge you submitted." Dad stared at the papers, face ashen. Mom covered her mouth. Caleb's voice cracked. Vivian, please. She confronted you, I continued. You lied. So she made sure you'd never touch another dime of this family's money. Caleb's knees buckled. He grabbed the edge of the table. I was going to pay it back. When? I asked. After you'd stolen more. Silence. Nobody clapped now. Nobody cheered. The celebration they'd thrown, balloons, cake, congratulations, felt like a funeral. Dad finally spoke, voice hollow. What happens now? I closed the folder. The houses are mine. Legally. Permanently. There's nothing you can do. But, we're your parents. And Caleb's your son, I said. But Grandma trusted me. Not you. Not him. Me. I stood, picked up my briefcase, and walked toward the door. Before I left, I turned back. For what it's worth, I said quietly, I would have shared. If you'd ever asked. If you'd ever seen me. Mom started to cry. Caleb slumped into a chair. Dad just stared at the papers on the table. I walked out of that conference room and didn't look back. 3 months later, I hired a property management company to handle the rentals. I kept Grandma's yellow Formica table. And I never went to another family gathering again. Sometimes, the inheritance you deserve isn't the one they planned to give you. It's the one someone who actually loved you made sure you'd have.